The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brooks Show.
All right.
So there.
Yaron and Amy show. But what the hell? I had to try out my new opening music. So I don't know.
So I was the first. I am the honored first. Okay.
First, I didn't want to. I had Tara Smith on the show yesterday. I didn't want to subjugate her to that. I don't know.
I see. Okay. I know.
Did I keep the opening music or not? I mean, anyway, we'll try it for a while and see if people start unsubscribing in mass. The only thing that causes unsubscribers, I mean, I'm noticing that now. My numbers today plummeted on the subscription on YouTube once I posted up a short video where I, God forbid, defend immigration.
Oh.
So, because I said, Ayn Rand was an immigrant and Einstein was an immigrant, and I'm not going to put myself in the same category, but I'm an immigrant. Leonard's an immigrant. Half the institutes and immigrants, and it's like, oh no, we can't let Somalis in. It's like, okay, we're not going to talk about immigrants except this one.
Actually, we are. We're going to talk about a heroic refugee.
Immigrant. But we're not supposed to talk about heroic immigrants because immigrants are bad. Immigrants are going to destroy the world, and they're going to destroy America, and they already are destroying America, and we need to build a wall, and we need to build a wall in airplanes so we can, we need to build a wall in the airports, and we need to keep people out. There's a lot of destruction going on in the world right now. So criticizing Trump, but primarily talking about immigration is what loses me the most followers. Did you see the video of my supposed interview with this idiot?
I did not. I heard you talking about it, and I decided that I might not want to watch it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
It was something. It was something. A black man who's a white supremacist.
When you were describing it, I was thinking you should have just gotten up and walked out of that thing and not even finished it.
Considering it, I was the whole time. But I think actually, by staying in it, I think a number of people, they saw the contrast. They saw the difference. And the other thing that it reveals, the number of people who came on, even people who consider themselves objectivists, and sided with him.
Oh, wow.
And one who's been a critic of ours for a long time.
Okay.
I mean, basically came out and complimented him, the guy who was interviewing me. So I think that's more revealing than anything. So it's a great filter to really weed out the people who are complete and utter.
Past few years have been a lot of litmus tests in my regard. And actually, I think this issue today might be one of them as well, because I don't know, whether everybody who calls themselves an objectivist would praise Rahaf Muhammad as a hero in the way that I would. It's sort of in the, kind of Edward Snowden also heroic. But I am just amazed at how wonderfully this story resolved. I mean, this has just been a little bit over a week.
Yep.
And she went from being intercepted in Thailand in the midst of an escape from an abusive, unjust regime in Saudi Arabia, and parents who were taking advantage of, I guess, everything that Saudi Arabia gets to give them under the law in terms of control over their kids, their daughter, Rahaf. And, she's trying to escape. She's intercepted by the Thai authorities, barricades herself in a hotel room and tries to get help.
Right.
And
mistaken, her father shows up. Yeah. Everything looks like it's going against her. And there's a precedent of another girl in a similar situation, I think in the Philippines, who's gagged, tied up, and taken on a private jet back to Saudi Arabia and never heard of from again.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. But in this case, within a week, she is in Canada.
Yeah.
And she's off to live a life.
I mean, Canada wasn't so cold.
Yeah.
I'd be praising Canada quite a bit, but
Well, Australia had their chance and they didn't snap her up. I mean, think about this, of all the countries, she listed a number of countries in the tweet where she was saying under the UN conventions, blah, 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 I claim asylum and I would, seeking asylum from these countries. And she listed United States and Australia and Canada, New Zealand, I believe. I can't remember. But Australia had a chance to snap her up. We could have. And who was it? It was Justin Trudeau, who
yes.
came through heroically for her off. He had the balls to stand up to Saudi Arabia and help this girl escape oppression. And if you have any doubt as to whether it's oppression, first of all, they have the legal regime of guardianship in Saudi Arabia. So people are saying, oh, she should have just waited in line. And why did she, get asylum so quickly and everything else? I know people who have been waiting in line for a very long time and they did not resent her the way I heard some of the resentment out there. She was in imminent danger.
In Saudi Arabia, you get killed. I mean, in Saudi Arabia, they kill you. It's not a game. It's not like waiting patiently in line at the embassy. If they honor killings are legit. And she dishonored the family and she's an apostate.
Yeah. And right? she couldn't just hang out in Thailand either. She was in danger in Thailand. She has much better prospects for safety.
It's not clear the Thais wanted her.
Canada.
It's not clear the Thais wanted her.
No. But I mean, if she, they were letting her stay there while she was waiting or something, that is not a sustainable situation for her either.
I never thought I'd actually say this, but good for Justin Trudeau.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you got to call it when they do something good, and shame on Donald Trump and shame on Australia and shame on New Zealand and Western Europe and the countries.
Now, here's the thing. I mean, we don't know. Behind the scenes, there may have been some discussions between us and the Canadians. And maybe he was saying, well, maybe you take her and I don't want to lose face with the Saudis right now. And I'll give you this. Or
Donald Trump, if that's what happened. Either way.
I know.
The Americans, because losing face with the Saudis is what we actually should be doing.
Yes. Especially over something like this, we should be taking a stand. But instead, she, in a desperate attempt to be able to live her own life, control her own life, as she says in her statement, she is now able to choose her education, where she can travel, who she can marry, all of these basic decisions that women in other countries all over the world get to make. We're in the 21st century. She is not allowed in Saudi Arabia to make these decisions for herself, even as an adult. And she said, I almost want to swear, forget that. I'm out of here. Yep. And, she tries to escape. And sure enough, she is able to do it. And Trudeau saves her. Here's where some interesting.
She renounces Islam. So
she did.
That's a huge thing. It's incredibly courageous for any Muslim woman, particularly one in Saudi Arabia who hasn't yet left. She renounced Islam, and that's why her family was going after her. So we're already getting some flack, right? So Ryan, you put some Canadian dollars into this, so I have to read it, right?
Okay, sure.
Justin Trudeau is a virtue signaling, rights rampling, immoral joke. Please do not praise him for this vote grubbing action. Okay, let me say this though. If this is vote grubbing, then good for you Canadians. That is, if you Canadians actually will vote for somebody because you do something like this, then I am in awe of Canadians. I always thought Canadians were a little wimpy and a little cowardly. So if you were this rights respecting and courageous as to take in a Saudi girl to piss off the Saudi regime and to support the heroic action this girl took, then good for you. Okay, I withdraw my compliments of Justin Trudeau, and I grant those compliments to Canadian people who are going to vote for Justin Trudeau because of this. So either way, Canada went up, in spite of the cold, went up in my esteem as a consequence of this. I think there are a lot of things positive about Canada. For example, you have a much, much, much better, in my view, immigration policy than the United States. I'm going to get harassed in a minute about that. There's a lot more good legal immigration into Canada than there is into the U.S. It's easy to immigrate if you have a job, to get a job into Canada. But Hey, this is great. One more comment from the super chat, and then we'll go to your. I know you have some complexities.
Different angles on the Rahaf story. Mm-hmm.
So why didn't so Liberal Deutsch, who is very supportive of me on super chat, and he put money in his comment as well. Not a comment I would typically read. Why didn't you tell JLP, that's the guy who was interviewing me, that you're providing more alpha than he could ever imagine? He's the one eating all the beta. You missed the opportunity. I mean, the primary reason is I don't stoop to personal attacks in any kind of interview like this. I the whole alpha beta, I think that whole notion is stupid. Somebody calls me a beta male. What who cares? I mean, that's so ridiculous. So I am above that. I called him a racist because he was a racist, because he that wasn't an ad hominem. He actually expressed racist points of view, and I called him on those points of view. But I wasn't going to get into a debate with him on what's an alpha male and who's an alpha male and who's a beta male. I don't really care one way or another. If anybody who knows me, even just a little bit, just by watching these videos, thinks of me as a beta, I don't care. You're weird. Amy,
I mean, really, the biggest alpha beta issue in the whole world is, does somebody have the balls to stand up for what's right? Yeah. And
even when people are unsubscribing to his channel, or even when people are demonstrating, even when people are threatening his life. I used to wear a bulletproof vest for a while because of the threats.
Yeah.
What the hell?
No, okay. But I mean, what's the alternative, right? Okay, so here's a question. I've got this news sandwich on Rahaf, and I was, praising her and also talking about the fact that while I would have liked her to have come here to our country, of course, we're not the right country for her, unfortunately. It's
not
just,
right now.
Not right now, unfortunately. So I posted this news sandwich, and in this news sandwich that I posted, it's in the program notes at don'tletitgo.com. By the way, you can find all this stuff. I praised her beauty just once, and I didn't focus on it and make a big thing, but I just said she's a beautiful, courageous, independent woman with tremendous initiative. These are the things that I knew about her from, what I saw on Twitter. Is it wrong to praise her at all for her looks? Obviously, like I said, I didn't make a focus of it, but is it wrong to mention it?
Amy.
Huh?
You're a male chauvinist. I mean, I've been praising her looks all week because I think she's really beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, particularly in the photo where she's made up, which it looks like a glamour shot.
Yeah.
She's a gorgeous woman. And I don't think there's anything wrong in complimenting somebody on their beauty. It doesn't mean that you put that at the same as her character in terms of your esteem. If she hadn't been beautiful, we still would have defended her. We still would have stood by her. But she is beautiful, and we are beings, I think. And this goes to, it goes to human nature. I mean, we love beauty. We love beauty in a beautiful home, a beautiful painting, a beautiful man, a beautiful woman. I think men tend to praise women more and then women praise men more, but that's because we're sexual beings as well. But when you see something beautiful, I think it's ridiculous not to praise it. It's something. It's a value. It is a value. It's a value to me to see somebody beautiful.
Sure. And the other thing is she would post beautiful pictures of herself on that Twitter feed, right? And clearly she's proud of her looks as, one aspect of herself, right? So I didn't think she'd be offended if I mentioned it one time. Like I said, when I did the summation on the news sandwich about, her being deserving of assistance and a good life, I didn't focus on that because that's not the total essential, but why not notice it? Why not praise it? I mean, I don't
see why not. And again, if she hadn't been beautiful, we still would have fought just as hard for her. But she is what she is. People say, this is a good one. Beauty shames unattractive people, makes them feel bad. If it shames you and makes you feel bad, that's your fault. That's ridiculous. Just like, but that would be true of of any characteristic, there are people who don't share that characteristic. So, you know, what else? Anyway, the problem is that beauty can be deceiving. Yeah, it can be. That's why it's not the only thing you would praise, and it's not the thing at the end of the day. If you think you have a relationship, any kind of relationship, that's not what you focus on. That's not what's essential, but it's a component. It's not unimportant.
Right. No, and as I said, I didn't make a big thing, but I did mention it one time, and
you got harassed because.
Well, I mean, there is this, and the person who brought this up had a point, which was that in our culture, it has been traditional to praise women for beauty and not for intelligence or other valuable characteristics. And I told this person back, I said, hey, I am fully aware of this because my mother, who would have had her birthday this week, she died way back in 1995, and she had her issues, as you'll hear in a second. But she actually told me, and I think on more than one occasion, I remember it, but I think on more than one occasion, that if I was intellectual, I would be all alone. And that was what she believed about herself, that if she was too intellectual, then no man would want to be with her. Right?
Well, so, and I think the tragedy is that, and I know people have, people claim I'm too feminist, but the tragedy is that in the past, that has often been the case. That is, I mean, if you read about really smart women, intellectual women who knew a lot, were well educated in the 19th century, even certainly in the 18th, 17th centuries, they were ostracized. They were looked down on. They were alone. No men wouldn't want to. Wouldn't want to have anything to do with it. Female artists are very, very rare in the 19th and 18th century because people look down on any kind of skill or talent that a woman exhibits. So I think that definitely is in our history. I think we're beyond that. I really think we're in a much better place in terms of how we think about women and how we treat women. And I think we're in a place where you can say a woman is beautiful without people assuming that therefore you don't appreciate her intelligence.
Especially in the context where the main focus is to appreciate her for her other amazing qualities. Again, here's this woman who is independent, courageous, showed tremendous initiative to fight for her life. Amazing qualities. A similar kind of question.
Here we go, right? So somebody says, if every person who could leave Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, could claim asylum based on atheism, then we would have a flood of Muzzy immigrants. If we could have a flood of Muslims who declare themselves immigrants, great.
You mean atheists? Yeah.
Yeah, atheists, and they're not Muslim anymore, right? They're atheists. So that would be terrific, and that would empty those stupid countries from, potential terrorists and potential, crazies, and bring them to a culture where they could embrace their atheism and they could live a good life.
And listen, I mean, this is the thing. She sounds like she appreciates freedom as well. Let me ask you a similar question, though, in terms of, people referring to her a certain way. In all the headlines, they talk about she's a teenager, the Saudi teen and the teen and the teen. What is there some sort of agenda that they have by using that? Are they trying to say she has so much, again, initiative and courage for a teenager and independence? Or are they trying to say, well, she's just a teenager. Why are people taking her so seriously? What do you think?
I think there are two possibilities. One is, look how courageous she is, in spite of the fact that she's so young. Mm-hmm. So it's emphasizing that. The other way you could think about it and is, what the Saudis claimed. She said, look, she's not of age, right? She can't make these kind of decisions. Her family, after all, this is a family dispute, and she should come home and she should be accountable to her father because she's just a teenager. She's young. So I don't know. It's hard to tell what was going through the media in terms of why they were striking. I think those would be the two things. One is to emphasize, if they were positive, how courageous she is given how young she is. The other is to say, is she really independent? Although I would say even if she was 15, she should have been granted asylum given the what she would be expected to go through when she returned home.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, please, Muslim countries, send all your atheists to us.
We want them. Yeah, definitely.
We'll embrace them.
Yeah, people who have the courage. I mean, and it's interesting because in the kind of later articles, they didn't emphasize her atheism so much, but right there in the New York Times in the beginning, they had an interview with her and she said, I renounced my religion and declared myself to be an atheist, and therefore that puts me at risk. And sure enough, it does. And
part of the courage involved here is she is heading towards a life that's going to be lonely and difficult. She's alone. She doesn't have a family support system. I don't know what the mechanism is in Canada to deal with asylum. She might have to change her name. She might have to go into hiding for a while.
Hope so.
She's going to, have to find a job. She looks like she's educated. It seems like she knows English, but she's going to have to deal with a new culture. She's going to have to adapt and assimilate, and as an independent, all alone young person. And that to me is incredibly courageous. And for those of you cynical, Yaron just supporting this because he's for open immigration, which is people are on the chat. Yeah. I mean, just bizarre in the name. It just shows how you have no soul. You have no appreciation for an individual. You don't care about individuals. You don't care about individual courage and individual audacity. And she is a true hero. And it's true. I've been criticized. I gave this talk a while ago on immigration, and I say this often. I said this in Denver on Friday, and somebody actually said it really caused them to stop and think. The mother who crosses the border, and I'm going to get like 1,000 people are going to unsubscribe now. Watch this. Okay. The mother who crosses the border so that her baby is born in the United States, so that her child is born under freedom, so that her child has the opportunities that the American system grants it. And even if she does it illegally, is in my book a heroine. She is a hero. She is taking the value most important to her baby, and making sure that her baby lives under freedom. I mean, I get teared up just thinking about it. And I know all the cynics on this say, but she's illegal. And she's Mexican. And
I want to ask them where they were when Ilian Gonzalez's mother did the same thing, essentially.
That's right. And we fought, you in particular, fought. And Leonard and you went out to Miami and fought for keeping Ilian Gonzalez, even though he was Hispanic, and when he grew up, he might vote Democratic.
Oh, but see, Cuban Hispanics are okay.
Yeah, that's right, because they were Republicans.
Right? Yeah, because they lived under communism or something. Yeah. Okay, so she actually doesn't know English very well, and as this goes into the next question, which is, under what terms can she be considered heroic? So, again, I shared this news sandwich, and one objection was the thing about mentioning her beauty. But the other objection that I got was, well, she'd be a lot more courageous if she had stayed there and fought.
God. I find it. Okay, that just makes me so angry.
And then, further angle on the question is, now she's a hero, but only if she pledges her whole life for fighting for other women who are in her same situation.
That is absurd and ridiculous. You don't owe anybody anything. And why should she stay in Saudi Arabia and commit suicide? You don't owe it. The same thing I hear about immigrants all the time. We don't want a brain drain because that'll hurt the country from which they came, as if anybody really cares about the country from which they came, and including these people. These people hate the countries from which they came. What did Donald Trump call them? Shithole countries, right? So nobody cares about those countries. But no, she doesn't owe anybody anything. Her heroism is that she pursued her values. She pursued her life. She took the route that is going to make her life the best life that it can be. Heroism is not about sacrificing for others. Heroism is not fighting for a cause. She didn't do this in the name of atheists or in the name of Saudi women or in the name of anything. She did it in the name of the most sacred, important thing possible, in the name of her own life, in the name of her own happiness, in the name of the sanctity of who she is, of her individualism. And if you understand anything about Ayn Rand, and if you've read books like, why didn't in We the Living, why didn't Kira stay? She could have fought the commies. Why did Ayn Rand leave? What a coward Ayn Rand must have been.
Wow, she could have taken down the whole Soviet Union single-handedly, right?
Yeah, she could have fought the commies. It is so disgusting for people who were born in a free country, who were born with free speech, who were born with every opportunity in the world to make their lives the best life that it can be, then to say, oh, why didn't she risk her life for some cause? They wouldn't risk their life for anything. So I don't know. It just makes me so angry, so freaking angry.
So listen, and this is the thing. This is another thing that impresses me about her, right? They have some of, she's been associated with a journalist from Australia. And then there is an ex-Muslim feminist woman in Canada, right? Who I think helped her get there. And the Australian journalist did an interview with her and put as the headline that Rahaf pledges to use her freedom to campaign for others after being granted asylum in Canada, right? And so there's a whole interview and, she talks about the danger that she was in. And she talks about the fact that she had actually decided that she might even end her life if she thought she was going to be forced back to Saudi Arabia. She'd rather kill herself than go back there. Okay. But yeah, sure. She can only be courageous if she stays there, right? She said, I wanted to be free from oppression and depression. I wanted to be independent, she said. And she talks about the freedoms that she couldn't have had there. And then this is interesting. So this is not her speaking. This is the interviewer / journalist writing this part. It says, Miss Al-Kunin said she wants to use, I have this horrible cold. I'm so sorry, people. She wants to use her newfound freedom to campaign for women's rights in Saudi Arabia and to call for an end to the male guardianship system enforced by the Saudi regime. So, she wants to use this to do it. And then the quotations that they have from her are just to the effect that they will be inspired by what she's done in behalf of her own life. Not that she's saying in the future, I'm just going to spend like my whole life doing this, but she is happy to serve as an example for them. I mean, she's already put herself at tremendous risk by being out there. By the way, I was approached by somebody on one of the social media outlets, wrote me a message behind the scenes and said, hey, me and my sister and my wife, we want to get out of, wherever we are. But we don't. And I said, well, make a public campaign like she did and get a bunch of sympathy and, do what she did. And he says, well, I don't want to work like that. I don't think he meant like he doesn't want to do hard work, but he says he doesn't want to expose himself. He doesn't want to put himself out there and let people know who he is and details about his life. Why? Because there's tremendous risk. She has already risked so much. And then the idea is, the thing that's going to make her good is if she pledges to spend so much time and effort in the future doing this. And no, here are the quotations from her. She says, I think that the number of women fleeing from the Saudi administration and abuse will increase, especially since there is no system to stop them, she said. And then she says, I'm sure that there will be a lot more women running away. I hope my story encourages other women to be brave and free. She says, I hope my story prompts a change to the laws, especially as it's been exposed to the world. This might be the agent for change. She's not saying, I'm going to spend my whole life going out there and serving others.
No, but I'm sure a lot of activists want her to do that.
Well, right. So this was the interview. Right. This was the interview that she did. And as I said, the headline, they made it sound as if she's pledging to spend her whole life doing this. And then today she gave a press conference and she read her own statement in Arabic and it had to be translated. But this is what she says in the statement. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but she's grateful for offers of support and everything else. And she says, I understand that everyone here and around the world wishes me well and would like to continue to hear about how I am doing, but I will I will not be conducting any more media interviews for the time being. I ask everyone to respect my wishes. I would like to start living a normal private life, just like any other young woman living in Canada. She says, this starts with me getting help in the settlement process and, of course, learning English. So she doesn't know English yet. She says, today and for years to come, I will work in support of freedom for women around the world, the same freedom I experienced on the first day I arrived in Canada. But she's not saying she's going to live some sort of public existence and sort of mortgage her ability to live a good, private, free, normal life to do this.
I mean,
she's not going to sacrifice.
I've seen, by everything I've heard, by everything I've seen written about her, she sounds like a pretty amazing young woman. I mean, she really does. Somebody who knows what she wants, who's going to fight for what she wants, and she's about living. She's not about sacrificing. She's not about dying. She's not about the morality of death, which is the morality of altruism. She is about living life to the fullest, and that's great. And I hope she lives it. That is, I hope she's allowed to live it, and I hope she actually rises to the occasion and lives that kind of life. She deserves it. We all deserve it. Every one of us deserves it. Well, except some people in the chat, they don't deserve it.
Yeah. So I write back to her, best wishes, your life is yours. And of course I was inspired in that by, an excerpt from Rand and Galt's speech. Your life belongs to you and the good is to live it.
I wonder if at the end of We the Living, some of these people think that if Kira had made it, and I don't want to I guess I gave away the ending, but if Kira had made it, then the border guards in the West should have turned her around and returned her. Because who needs these Soviets, right? Bringing their crummy ideas into our Western view.
Well, yeah, they're just going to want to vote the same thing in over here or something, right? No. Right. I mean, obviously, if you were going to bring in a lot of people from Saudi Arabia, you would need to have a screening process to make sure that they're earnest and that they're not terrorists trying to infiltrate and et cetera. We'd have to do that. That would be the conscientious thing to do to protect the safety of American people, which is what our government's supposed to do. But I think that you can sift out. And of course, the women are some of the worst victims of that horrible system.
Yep.
They really are. So that is the great news. This is what I call the great in the title. I have the great, the good, the lame, the messy, and the horrific.
Half an hour on each of those.
Well, we can't, I know, but Rahaf deserves.
Amy is sick. People are asking. Yes, Amy's got a cold.
I'm so sorry, people. I'm sorry, but I have to come and do. I actually had the cold ever since I had the cold when I was on Tucker last week, but I got myself on a bunch of Sudafed and Afrin, and you couldn't tell, but it's just been hanging on. Okay, so now we have the good. You want to hear the good?
Yeah, I'm always. I mean, it's kind of, we should have ended, we need to end with something good because we can't go and just make
but they have the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I had the great, the good, the lame, the messy, and the horrific. That's what I've got for you today.
At the end somehow. We'll find a way to bring it.
Oh, I have something at the end that you get to classify.
Okay, good.
And who knows where you're going to classify it. I know where I classify it, but there's some suspense, okay? No, the Jezebel song is always good. That's just without question. I actually tweeted that to Rahaf because Haley Mary, the lead singer, has what I think is a very healthy take on feminism, if you're going to accept that feminism is okay in any way. But she definitely likes men, doesn't hate men. And she talks about, conditions improving for women, that with each generation, we will try to make the conditions for women better and better. So that song is somewhat of her feminist anthem, and it's quite good. So here's the good. First story. Feds can't force you to unlock your iPhone with finger or face, so-called biometrics, a judge rules. They had already ruled in federal courts that you could not be forced to unlock your iPhone with a passcode.
Okay.
And there's a strange kind of distinction in the law, and it's been a long time since I've been to law schools. I'm not an expert on this, but there's a distinction between giving the government physical evidence, which you can get with a warrant, versus giving them so-called testimonial evidence, which is tantamount to self-incrimination. So we have the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. And somehow they decided that being forced to type in a passcode is testimonial, I guess, because there's conceptual content to it or something. You're typing a number in. That's testimonial. But there was a question as to whether a fingerprint or the iris scan or the face scan that can unlock phones, whether that's the same thing. And a judge ruled that yes, it was. It's kind of iffy, right? Because do you have to, if you give blood when you get a DUI stop, is that testimonial?
Do they need, so if they have a warrant, can they force you to unlock the phone?
Apparently not.
So
right?
Let's say they have a warrant to search your apartment. They can't get the key?
Well, okay. That's the interesting thing, right? And this is where we want to talk about this. To me, the testimonial thing, the Fifth Amendment link to unlocking a phone is not the fact that you're using a passcode to open it, or whether you want to think that an iris scan or your face or whatever is somehow testimonial itself. These phones record so much about us. And there's a lot that our phones record about us that even we don't understand. Most of us don't understand. People who are really techie understand your browsing habits and your searching habits and all the different things that are recorded in our phones. It's basically almost like letting them peer into your brain. So I would think that a lot of things that could be searched by the feds on a phone, those things should be prohibited without permission, that they are in effect incriminating yourself because you've in effect downloaded your brain, a lot of your brain into this device. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's interesting. I don't know. Could you open a diary, somebody's diary?
That's what I say. So the way that I put it today on social media, because somebody was asking me about this, I said, this is like a diary on massive steroids, because we record things into this without even intending to.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like, obviously it's not a perfect copy of our brain, but there is so much of our brain in these darn things. So to me, policy wise, what I would see sort of as the ideal solution would be, you could get a very delimited warrant to look for very specific things on that phone. So suppose child pornography, right? Okay. And you could force somebody to open it where they could only look for those things. And of course, the devices are tracking what happens in the device, right? And there's an activity history in a device. So if the feds looked for anything more than what was authorized by a properly delimited warrant.
I agree with that. That makes sense. I'm happy by the ruling, because in the world we live in today, I just think federal government has way too much power, and it's abusing that power, and it's
right. But what they're saying is, even if you have a warrant, you could never get into this for anything, and I think that's overly broad.
I think that, but I'm still happy that they can't get into anything right now, just because they're so over the top.
Well, I'm gonna put this in my book and describe what I think would be and why, because I think that these should be, and they are right now, thankfully, these should be like a house, like you just said a while ago, to which only you have the key. And if the feds want to get into it, they have to come to you with a warrant based on probable cause, based on particular suspicion, and delimiting the things that are to be searched and or seized from the device. They can't just do a free-for-all into your brain that you've downloaded into your device. That would be my thing. So this is good, I think, in the sense that it's on the right track substantively. It's good in the sense that it's a district court ruling, and of course it could be overturned or, in the upper courts. So that's why I put it under the good category. It would be great if I think it was, a more substantively accurate description of what's really going on with these kind of searches. And it would be great if it was a Supreme Court ruling someday. Imagine if the Supreme Court solidifies the idea that this is tantamount to a house to which only you have the key, and they have to come to you with a warrant. They can't go, to Facebook or to Apple and cop out. They have to actually face you with a warrant and present it. That's how it used to be. That's how it should be. So that's good. Another good thing is the one that you sent me and I had seen before, Yaron, which is the story about the Chinese apparently being able to sprout a cotton plant on the moon.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not on the moon in a
right.
sense. It's not,
biosphere, right?
It's on an unmanned spacecraft on the moon's surface, and the cotton spout, and I think they've got a potato sprout there as well. So
but I think the cotton is the only one that has had any success. Is that right?
I think the other one's going to be successful as well.
Oh, the potato. Okay. Yeah.
Wow. So this is kind of a step one to creating a kind of a food for a colony on the moon, and potentially ultimately for a spaceship that travels for months or years into space and actually has to provide food. So it's really cool. The science is pretty cool. The fact that they've done it is pretty cool. I know people are going to complain because it's the Chinese and we're complicated. But right. I support any advancement of China of science, and I think at the end of the day, the Chinese are not going to be successful in implementing this and actually doing stuff with this to the extent that they become more and more authoritarian, which is what it seems to be happening to them. So right. I think it's good because it's not great because it's China and because you worry about what they do with any scientific breakthrough. But I do think that, there's enough upside here for all of us that
it's promising. It's promising, right? Yeah, it is. So those are the good. And now we have the lame. And the first lame one actually does have an upside to it, which I'll tell you afterwards. But I got this notification from Instagram the other day that they were taking down a post of mine that I had posted back in August. And in the post, I compared communism to fascism, and it was in a graphic, and I did it on purpose because there is an Italian libertarian Facebook page that had been taken down for posting a similar graphic where you put the swastika and you equate it to the hammer and sickle. And you're basically saying that communism and fascism are two types of totalitarianism. They're both essentially the same, right? Sure. And I have a quotation from Ayn Rand in the graphic that you can see if you go, and I'll go ahead and read that for you.
Facebook didn't take it down, right?
Yeah, no, Facebook has not taken it down. This is part of the good news, right? It says fascism, Nazism, communism, and socialism are only superficial variations of the same monstrous theme, collectivism. So I put this up in response to the fact that this other Facebook page of libertarians in Italy had been taken down. And it got tremendous response at the time. But again, this is back in August. I had a version of it also on my Instagram. They took it down on my Instagram. They didn't give me any opportunity to appeal. Instagram did not. And I have written them days ago a message asking why and complaining, and they have not responded at all. So I say this is incredibly lame. The terms of service that would talk about this being a violation of their community standards when I am making this political philosophy point about fascism and communism, right? I'm not out there trying to uphold Nazism with my picture of a swastika here or anything like that, right? I'm not doing hate speech even. This is just making a political philosophy point about these systems. It's lame for them to do that and to not even answer me when I write them. So boo on you, Instagram.
I mean, this is part of a complaint about social media. They don't give objective criteria. And then there's no appeal process and there's no response. And it's just not a way to run a business. And I think long-term, they're going to suffer the consequences. Before you go on to the next lame, you got another lame one?
I do, but I was going to say there's a good side to this, which is that I've posted about this on Facebook now.
Yeah.
And this has gone viral again. Yeah. So Instagram trying to squelch it. And of course, Instagram's owned by Facebook, so it's really odd, right? There's different people, I guess, doing these enforcement. But if you look at this, I've got over 1,000 shares now on Facebook
Wow.
Yeah. Over 1,000 shares.
That's amazing.
Yes, of this graphic.
That's great.
So that's the upside of the story. Huh?
Thank you,
Yeah.
Instagram.
I guess. I mean, I'd already had hundreds of shares before, but now I'm up over 1,000 with that thing.
Like, my best shared video ever was Antifa. And I got lots of followers. So thank you, Antifa. I mean, I'm always thankful.
Yeah, I got a lot of page follows from this too. So that's excellent. So thank you. Welcome people who followed because of that. But yeah, so Instagram, it backfired. They tried to shut it down. I posted and complained about it, and it got even more circulation.
Society attempts to silence usually do backfire.
Yeah. And of course, it's not, this is the thing that's so lame too. I don't think it's Instagram themselves. It's just that they were responding. Somebody complained, and no doubt somebody complained. They were people, because I had a number of people coming after me when I was tweeting out in support of Rahaf. I even got one real threat that was directed to both me and her, probably more to her, but still it was responding to me. I got just tons. And so I think some people came and they were trying to find any post of mine that they could report to shut down. And that's what they found. So that was that. You said you have something else before I have the other lame story.
Chat. So first one is Gail asks a complicated question. She says, yes, there is an objective standard about beauty. What do you think it is, Yaron? Wow. I mean, I think it depends on the context. So I think how you define beauty, for example, in music is going to be different than how you define beauty in an artwork, and different than how you define beauty in a human being, or how you define beauty in a design, like an interior design or an architecture. I think there are aesthetic standards that are specific to the thing that you are evaluating. When it comes to human beings, I don't know. I mean, I haven't studied it carefully, but I think there are two things that qualify. One is symmetry. I think there's something about symmetry that appeals to beauty. Not in everything. So symmetry doesn't necessarily have to be in a house or in an interior design, but I think in a face and in a body, I think we find things that are symmetrical, or features that are symmetrical, are beautiful. And of course, the specifics in terms of are different. So in Asian culture, beauty is a little different than in the West in terms of, let's say, hair and the exact shape of the eyes and things. But in terms of the symmetry, beauty is always symmetrical. I think the other thing is, when you look more than just the face, is consistent with kind of the biological nature of the thing, right? So you look at a cheetah and it's beautiful when it's slim, and you get the sense, oh, it can run really fast, right? It can act based on its nature. And I think with human beings, it has to be with, again, it's physical beauty. So, are we physically fit? I think physical fitness has something to do with it. I think physical appearance, because of the role of sex for a woman, breasts and other features, right? I mean, so a sense of it's a woman, and so a certain shape that is womanly, and so, I mean, there are a lot of these things, but it has to do with function, right? Form follows function in a sense. What is the function of this biological entity?
Well, they talk about big hips on a woman because it means fertility, and there's, right.
Yeah, and of course, nothing, exaggeration also means, is something frowned upon. So, I mean, but I think you'd have to really study it to figure it out in detail. And then, of course, there has to be something that reflects intellect. And I think that is primarily reflected in people's eyes and the way they look in the there's something about eyes that really reflects curiosity, intensity, intelligence. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that we think, oh, that guy's beautiful, or wow, what a handsome figure. I don't think that's subjective and arbitrary. I'm not sure we have it completely defined in terms of what it is, but I don't think it's arbitrary. And so, yeah, these are the kind of things that you can get easily in trouble with. But it does strike me as symmetry and kind of form follows function kind of ideas of what it would be.
And health, right?
Health
As well, right?
Actually, the form express its health in terms of its functioning. It can move. It can, there is a sense of it can do the things that it needs to do in order to survive and be successful.
Health, she says as she coughs.
And
horribly. This is so bad. Sorry, guys.
Fine. All right, one more, two more actually. Why not use? Okay, that's just a comment for me. I will try to figure that out. Oh shit, they're all coming in now. All the super chats with their multiple dollars. All right, this is a question.
You know why? Because the next lame thing that I have is about Donald Trump, and they want to prevent you. No, don't talk about Trump. Don't do it.
Talking about Trump. All right, this one's for you. This is from Emmanuel. He builds artificial intelligence tech in Silicon Valley. So that's just for the context. He knows nothing about the law. So he's asking. It seems like a lot of the legal rules are based on precedent. But that seems irrational. Yet it seems like that's what's pervasive in the courts. What's wrong? What is wrong with this perspective?
Okay, so basing things on precedent is not irrational because there is a principle in the rule of law that says that you need to have continuity, predictability, stability. And so reliance on precedent will ensure that everybody knows when they're going about their business during the day, when they run the risk of running afoul of the law and having something happen to them, right? When is the government going to do something to them because of an action that they've taken? It's nice to be able to look at either law that's on the books or precedent in the courts and try to determine that. Also for law enforcement, right? Law enforcement need to know when they're going to try to conduct a search, where the lines are drawn, what they're allowed to do without a warrant, what they're allowed to do with a warrant, pursuant to a warrant, etc. So predictability and precedent go hand in hand. On the other hand, they can't be slavish to precedent. And I think Tara Smith has some helpful things to say about when it's good to stick to precedent, when it's good to depart from precedent. But one thing you really would want to look at is, what is the principle behind the precedent? And as we're encountering new things like artificial intelligence and the extent to which artificial intelligence is having me involuntarily download my brain into this device because of artificial intelligence, right? That sort of technological phenomenon, we really need to have a solid grasp of principle and the ability to properly apply principle into context. I think this is where the whole right to privacy went wrong in the first place, because the progressives, who didn't believe in property rights anyway, didn't believe in contract rights anyway, they were not motivated to take the principles of private property and the right to contract and figure out how they would apply in the context of protecting a person's privacy against intrusion from new technology. At that time, the new technology was instantaneous photography. Oh my gosh, you mean you don't have to sit and, stay in one place without moving a muscle for 10 minutes to have your photograph taken anymore? It's instantaneous. Boy, this is a huge new invasion of privacy. Little did they know all the invasions of privacy that were possible because of technology in the future. Nonetheless, that doesn't mean that these solid, time-tested principles of the common law, property and contract, that they don't apply in this realm. And I've spent so much of any academic career, such as it has been, explaining how you can do that properly. So yes, precedent, but let's look to the principles within the precedent and apply those intelligently. We're going to make mistakes sometime too. And that's why you have to have the ability to reverse precedent, and contradict precedent and kind of make new precedents where there's rights violations. It is a trickier question. And I want to, go back and refer people to Tara Smith to talk about, when should a judge stick to precedent, even though he thinks there's a better answer, and when not, right?
Yeah, and it strikes me as it would depend on the case and how bad the precedent is, right? So I think the worse the precedence is, the more rights violating the precedence is, the more it needs to be overturned. And who should do the overturning it's not easy to
yeah. One of my favorite decisions, and I can't remember, it must have been a dissent, was from Judge Kaczynski. And right, he had his little scandal of his own, his little Me Too-ish sort of thing that happened. But he was such a brilliant jurist, right? And he had this great opinion where the federal court was asked to apply California law. And it required that they reach a certain result, but he hated the result. He was a big critic of the result. It was contract law. It was basically California contract law basically said that judges can rewrite any contract if they don't like it. I mean, it wasn't that bad, but I'm giving you the essential. And Kaczynski was saying, look, when people write contracts, they write it in certain language, and it is not the case that a judge can say that any language in any contract can be seen to be as ambiguous. If you just read it the right way, then suddenly it's ambiguous, and the judge can rewrite the contract. And it was a really horrific case. It was something like people had signed an agreement to pay a really high interest rate on a mortgage or something. And it was, remember in the 70s, the interest rates were like through the roof. And so there was a commercial lease or commercial real estate transaction, huge interest rate, and they didn't like their interest rate. So they tried to get out of it. And they tried to say that the contract was ambiguous. Kaczynski was brilliant in saying, yeah, this is what the law says, but boy, it's terrible. And here's why. So that's one thing that judges can do if they don't like the precedent. Yeah.
All right. One more question, then we'll go back to the program. And I don't even know what the answer is. I don't understand the question. So I've been reading about communal narcissists. Have you ever heard of communal narcissists?
Communal narcissists.
Those who get validation through charity and activism, yet are nasty behind closed doors. Could this particularly explain the altruist mentality? Well, I don't know if you've got cause and effect here, right? I mean, I'm not sure what you're arguing the cause and effect here is. I think that many altruists are what you're describing. They practice charity and they're very active in social causes, but they're nasty, nasty human beings because they're frustrated by the fact that they haven't pursued their own values, they haven't pursued their own life, they haven't actually lived. So they're depressed and they're angry and they're pissed off. So I think that describes a lot of committed altruists. I mean, Mother Teresa was nasty, a nasty person from all indications towards herself and towards other people. I'm not sure what that has to do with communal narcissists, and I never heard of the term.
I've never heard of that term either.
More details, but I do think that describes the more committed an altruist you are. I think that committed in terms of you really want to live your life that way, the nastier a human being you tend to be because.
Well, so you resent your fellow human being because every potential, every human being who comes up to you in your whole life is a potential mortgage on your life. Right. And I told you this story before, I'm sure, but I went and I had the privilege of going to UT Austin for a year. And there was a colleague there in the philosophy department who I had lunch with, and he was a very nice guy. And he'd met a number of people who visited at UT Austin that were objectivists. And he was kind of surprised we were nice people. Why is it that we're nice people as objectivists? And he didn't say this, but there's a lot of people, you're an objectivist and you don't eat babies for breakfast. You're nice. How is that possible?
I get that all the time.
And that's always my theory. My theory is we don't believe that other people represent this mortgage or claim on our lives. And so we have the ability to kind of sit back and just be benevolent.
Yeah. I think that other people are not a threat. Other people actually are value. It's one of the things you realize.
Potential values. Everybody. Yeah.
Potential values. And unless they prove themselves to be bad people, almost all of them are values to some extent or another. All right, next topic.
Okay, so here is another of the lame, and this is I could have continued this series. I actually had only 2 tweets this way, but you've seen Donald Trump do this all week long. He's been talking about the crisis. Yeah, both in one, just 2 for 1. Let's see how many we could lose, how many subscribers for you. No.
Subscribers leaving.
But he's been tweeting and everything out there making his case that this is an emergency. It's horrible at the border. I think he's backed off from the idea that he's going to declare emergency. He's not going to do that. But he wants everybody convinced that there is a huge crisis. Terrible things are going to happen if we don't fund this wall now, right? And give him what he wants. And what I call it is the scared leading the scarable. Obviously there's some fear in him if he's using motivation by fear for everybody else, but he has been putting out the scariest stuff, statistics and everything else in those tweets.
Yeah, the one you put up is thousands of illegal immigrants, thousands of illegal aliens who have committed sexual crimes against children are right now in Texas prisons. Really?
Yeah. Thousands? Now, New York Times did a fact checking on this.
Oh, but it's unbelievable what they say.
Oh, that's true. We're not supposed to. I'm so sorry. But, they went through all the statistics and stuff, and it's exaggerated. And, the people who are in the prison, some of them are here legally and some of them here are illegally. And
but it's sexual crimes against children. There are thousands. Yeah, right. I mean, this guy lies with no problem. And he has no concern about these things. Texas is actually the only state that actually reports crime statistics and reports whether they're legal, illegal, immigrant, non-immigrant, and gives you all that data.
Okay.
And the data I've seen from Texas, Americans are far more likely to commit crimes than immigrants, including illegal immigrants. So Americans are a much higher percentage of Americans commit these kind of crimes than illegal immigrants do. So this is just sheer fear mongering. I mean, I don't think this should be in the lame. This should be in the horrible.
No, I've got only one story that qualifies as horrific this week, and I think you'll agree why. I just put this as the lame. This is just lame.
But it's worse than lame. No, because
okay, so you're saying I'm becoming inured to Donald Trump, and I'm not denouncing the way I should.
Buy into this crap. This is the president of the United States, lying in, and he's been doing this since the campaign, lying in order to rev up emotions, lying in order to
scare people, to motivate you by fear,
lying in order to get people to be hateful towards unjustifiably. This is worse than horrific. This is, the lowest of the low. And this is what motivates people to do horrible things. Anyway.
The horrific is truly horrific. So we'll get there. And then you compare.
I think this is just as horrific in many ways.
Okay. I mean, it is. It's United States, and this is where we've come. And yeah, that is. But yes. Okay, here's messy. You could sort out the mess for us, because now we know that May and Brexit face an uncertain future because there's been a defeat in Parliament, a resounding defeat in Parliament of her Brexit plan. And now they're calling for a vote of no confidence. And some people are saying that there's a danger that Corbyn is actually going to be in.
Yeah, but Corbyn won't win the vote of no confidence. Enough people will vote for her because they don't want an election right now. I mean, a vote of no confidence would basically drive Britain into an election. And I think there are enough conservatives who don't want an election right now that will vote to keep the government going and vote to keep May going, at least until this whole Brexit stuff is resolved. So March 29th, Brexit happens unless something dramatic happens between now and March 29th. And what's really being voted on now is under what terms does Brexit happen. And what May proposed is a really, really, really bad deal with the European Union that would have basically preserved all the bad stuff in the European Union and all the good stuff in the European Union. So UK would have had the worst of all worlds. And good for the, I mean, I actually think this should have been under the good for the Parliament for rejecting this stupid, ridiculous, lame proposal that May had.
But it's messy because they don't have an agreement, right?
So now
that's why I put it in the messy, because the messy's has got some good, some bad. Yeah.
I mean, some are saying she's on a plane right now on the way to Brussels to renegotiate. She has to present Parliament with an alternative plan within 3 days. So on Monday, well, I think 3 working days. So Monday, she has to present to Parliament an alternative plan. That could be a compromise with the EU if the EU is willing to compromise. Not clear that they are. Or it could be a path for UK to exit without a deal with the European Union. Now, my view is, and I've said this from the beginning, is to hell with the European Union. The best deal, the best thing the UK could do is lower tariffs to zero, is exit, lower tariffs to zero, not just with the European Union, with the whole frigging world.
Right.
Lower all trade and capital barriers to the whole world, and lower actually immigration barriers. This they won't do. We know that. They only want Europeans, right? Because they're a little whatever. So they only want Europeans. So keep the immigration conditions that exist today for European citizens to come into UK. Then you still have the problem of Europe erecting trade barriers, but that will primarily hurt Europe.
Yes.
So my claim from the beginning was the thing about Brexit is this is an opportunity for the UK to become Freedom Island, become free trade island, to become this amazing place that trades with the entire world and that tells Europe to go take a hike. And if Europe doesn't want to trade with them, tough. They want to trade with Europe. So yeah, bring your Mercedes-Benz. You don't want to buy. Now it will result in a massive relocation. Companies will have to shift. Things will get restructured. It'll be messy. Brexit is going to be messy one way or the other. It's going to be messy economically.
Right.
But the outcome of this would be a far stronger, far better, far freer UK. But I can guarantee this, and I guarantee this from day one,
right,
is that it ain't happening. So Brexit is going to turn out to be a disaster for the UK because you don't have the leadership. Now, if Daniel Hannan was prime minister,
then
I'd be optimistic about Brexit. But May voted against Brexit, and she's compromising nothing. She doesn't believe in anything.
So sad.
Zach says you need to see a doctor.
I do probably, huh?
Diagnosing you over the internet.
Who said this?
Zach.
Okay, he's diagnosed. Yeah. If I don't get better in a couple of days, I will, Zach. So sorry. I'm loading up the vitamin C and actually feel a little bit better, believe it or not. So okay.
Placebo effect
of the vitamin C. So basically, you're saying that these people who are marketing the Brexit survival kits, that they're going to do quite well because Brexit is going to be a big old mess, and that they should prepare for not having all of their awesome favorite things imported.
I think it's going to be a mess. Exactly how the messiness manifests itself is hard to tell. I think at the end of the day, neither Europe nor the UK wants trade barriers between the two countries, and I think they'll come to some kind of agreement. Maybe it's the Norway plan. Norway's not part of the EU, but it has pretty free trade between Norway and the rest of Europe. Sweden is not part of the EU, or I think that's right. No, maybe it is part of the EU, but not part of the euro. But Norway's not part of the EU, but there is trade. So I think something will give so that it's not a complete utter disaster, but it's not going to be anywhere near as good as it could have been. Okay, we got one more question on Super Chat. I mean, this is, I guess to me, because I said this at some point, I can't remember when I said this. Okay, this is the value hierarchy according to Liberal Deutsch's quoting Yaron Brook, right?
Okay.
Fear first, art second, romantic relationships third, right?
What's first again? I didn't hear that part.
Career.
Okay.
Art, romance, right?
Okay.
So he says, really? At worst, give up your partner's life for painting? So first, we're not talking about giving anybody's life up. Hierarchy does not justify trashing the one in the lower stuff into oblivion, certainly not murdering them or giving up their life. But
there isn't always a conflict between the values, in other words, right?
You got to find a way to now make a conflict between them. Now, I'm not sure that that art is number 2 and romance is number 3. I mean, that's debatable. The need for art is metaphysical, but I think so is the need for romantic relationship. No, the idea is that in terms of the time and energy that you put in pursuing the thing, you put in most in your career. And indeed, people behave that way. Everybody says they love their family. Family is the most important thing in their lives. But if you measure what's important to you based on how much time you spend doing something, clearly people's behavior suggests that they value their career above all else. But it's not that one is at the expense of the other. There's no conflict between these values. It's just a matter of where you put your energy and your focus, particularly when you're pursuing these values. And there could be a period in your life where romantic relationship is the most important thing, and career it might be secondary. I mean, it also depends on the periods of your life. But overall, in a life without a career, you can't survive. I mean, partially you need to be able to eat. I think spiritually, you need both art and a romantic relationship to be happy. So you need all three of them to be happy. Indeed, if you take one out, I think it makes it hard to be happy. Any one of those, if you take out any one of those, it's because they're so important. They're so on top of that pyramid of values, right? That you take any one of them out, it's very difficult to be happy. And that's why we spend so much time pursuing all three of them. I mean, I think the one that we don't pursue a lot in the modern culture is art, but that's because most people are ignorant about art and don't know how to pursue it and don't know what to pursue. That's why you should all come to OCON, because OCON this year is about the Romantic Manifesto and about pursuing art. And my lecture is going to be how to go about pursuing art as a value for you and your life. So come to OCON. Do you have anything to add to that one?
Go to an art gallery or a museum with someone you love.
There you go. And and maybe you can become a curator at the museum, and then you can combine all three.
Wow, that would be amazing. But yeah.
Okay, Ryan asks, all right, this is the problem with money. It's tempting. In your view, is cronyism the main barrier to zero tariff policy? Is there a general cultural barrier that governs relating to jobs and prosperity? I think cronyism is a big part of it, but cronyism is the big picture where unions are part of that cronyism. I think historically the biggest barrier to zero tariffs have been unions, and nationalists. So two features. I don't think generally business has been the key. I think unions, and that's why Democrats traditionally have been very anti-immigration. Bernie Sanders is not pro-immigration. Bernie Sanders was anti-open immigration or loose immigration because they view it as a threat to the wages of the working class and therefore against unions. So I think it's, yes, some businesses, some cronyism, lots of unions, and the nationalism, the idea that we all have in our heads of American jobs, American industry. America has to have a steel industry. America has to have an auto industry. Why do we have to have an auto industry? There's no value in having Ford and GM in the United States. They should have gone bankrupt in the 1980s with Chrysler. Ronald Reagan should have never bailed out Chrysler. All the American auto companies should have gone bankrupt. They should have. Now, one of the reasons they go bankrupt, by the way, is because of government regulations. So, it's a combination of, these companies are badly run, maybe, but even more so, they live in a regulatory environment that is killing them. Okay, last one. Did you enjoy Taut Svaney's book, Sophie? Yes, very much. Did you enjoy it?
I have only gotten to part of it so far, and yes, I did like what I got to. I think I want to revisit that one because
keep going.
Good. Okay, so we're still in the messy. So here's another one that is messy, and maybe we could just talk about it briefly. It's one of these stories about the different disputes among tech companies. So I guess Apple was hauled before Congress, and one of the things that it said is that it wanted to use Qualcomm modems in the latest series of the phones. By the way, do you have one of these X phones? XS or XR or whatever?
No, I have I have XS.
You have XS? And is it all they say it's cracked up to be? Is it awesome?
It's awesome. But, I'm biased because I love Apple.
Yeah.
I drool over anything Apple.
I think when I finish my book, I might get myself one as a reward or something. That'll be my...
It's expensive and the upgrade? I mean, it depends on your financial situation.
Well, I've got one of those like, kind of plans you can upgrade every so often. I'm eligible to upgrade now, but I think I'm going to save money and wait and hold that out to myself as a treat. But anyway, in that series, they wanted to use Qualcomm chips, but Qualcomm refused to sell them to Apple after Apple sued Qualcomm over its licensing practices. So, they have these disputes.
Yep.
Apple doesn't like the way Qualcomm licenses, and then they sue them, and then they expect them to still sell them the chips, and then they don't. So good for Qualcomm to stand up for itself, right? If they're getting some sort of a frivolous or unjustified lawsuit. But I have a hard time in these sorts of cases. That's why I call it messy, sort of, untangling whether there was a real contract issue here or whether it's just monopolistic practices, as they call it, which is, of course, a bunch of BS, right? If Apple was suing Qualcomm over, quote, monopolistic practices, and that's all it was, then yeah, don't sell Apple the chips.
Yeah, if they were using antitrust stuff. But look, companies sue each other all the time. It's incredibly complex. These lawsuits have been going on for like 200 years, for as long as capitalism has been around. Property rights are messy. Property rights are complex. And we have a legal system exactly for this reason, so that Apple doesn't hire its private army and Qualcomm doesn't hire its private army, and they clash in the middle of California, because I think Qualcomm is in Southern California and Apple's in Northern California. We have this big battle in the center. This is why we have a court system. The court system untangles the mess, figures out what are the private property issues that are really here, what's contractual and what's not. Did somebody violate a contract? Is there really a patent issue? Whatever the issues are. And it gets resolved. And I don't think anybody should care that much about these kind of things unless they're using irrational laws, unjust laws, like antitrust, to go after the competitors. And then in that case, it would be bad.
Yeah, so here it says the conflict started in 2017 when Apple sued Qualcomm for its, quote, unfair licensing terms.
Yeah, so they might have been unfair in a legal, in a true sense. That is, they might have been some of the contract they had, or they might have changed the licensing in the middle. Who knows?
Well, and that's the thing. Like, if they actually, change something in the middle, okay, fine. Then you've got solid principles of common law of contract to rely upon. But in the last 100+ years, unfortunately, I think we have had in contract law a principle called unconscionability. And that allows essentially courts to rewrite contracts according to what the court thinks is fair. And that's...
I suspect, though, that in these kind of commercial cases where you've got two large companies with a bunch of very sophisticated lawyers, and it's not, some poor person who, got really hurt because of something. He used a lawnmower to try to tile his roof.
Yeah.
And it didn't say on the warning sticker, do not tile roofs with a lawnmower. And they give it something. I suspect that the courts are better. And it's just a suspicion that the courts are better, more rational in commercial disputes than they are in liability litigation type.
Well, in the sense that they don't think that there's an unfair balance of power and all that. Yeah.
There's bleeding, right? There's no somebody you can point to. Look how miserable they are. They deserve compensation, which happens all the time, I think, in liability litigation. So I don't know, but I suspect there's more rationality in the court system here than otherwise. But you're right. Who knows? Given the state of the world, it could be a lot worse than I imagine.
Some people resent patent law entirely because of the things like this, but I am a firm believer that patent is completely and 100% moral. And if you want innovation that gives us all the wonderful stuff to go away, just go ahead and get rid of patent law. And
and they should look up Adam Ossoff, who's done some excellent work.
Excellent work on this kind of stuff.
George Mason University. And he runs a center for the defense of intellectual property.
Yeah, CPIP.
So look him up, Adam Ossoff, if you're interested in copyright, intellectual property rights more broadly. Yep. All right, what's our final? Do we have a
so
final?
here's horrific.
Yeah.
Okay, so horrific is the Polish mayor who died after being stabbed on stage at a charity event.
Why was he stabbed?
Oh, you don't know the story. Now, this is the horrific story, Yaron. So now you tell me whether the other thing that you said was horrific is as horrific as this. Okay. What you have is you have the mayor of Gdansk. Is that how you pronounce it?
Gdansk, yeah.
Yeah. So he was a leading liberal critic of the populist right wing national government. He had been the mayor for 20 years or something. He was well liked. And, because he was a mayor in an urban city, even though the national government is populist, he, a liberal, can get elected, right? So we have.
Yeah, I mean, even the mayor of Warsaw is not from the ruling party. He is a center leftist, I guess.
Okay, yeah. So he's at a charity event. It was some sort of a Christmas related charity event, and someone got up on stage and stabbed him. And the person proceeded to shout out that he had had a personal grievance against Civic Platform, I guess is the political party that the mayor had once belonged to. He had said that he had been thrown in jail, I guess unjustly, by people in that party. And he says, that's why I killed him. And so, yeah, they tried to save him, but they could not save him. And he died on Monday afternoon. A lot of people are saying, oh, this wasn't really politically motivated because this guy had a personal grievance. But many people in Poland, thousands of people in Poland, apparently believed that this was a result, at least in part, due to the hateful political rhetoric, the climate that is going on in Poland. And so thousands got out onto the street to protest and mourn and say, basically, something has to change, because if this person can feel justified in killing a mayor of the opposition, even though always slightly crazy or he has his personal thing or whatever, he's fueled by this climate.
Yeah, no, I think this is a climate that we're seeing all over Eastern Europe, and we're seeing it in the United States, and we're seeing it elsewhere. I mean, there was that that British politician, also of the left, who was killed, who was shot to death in England by political opposition. I mean, it can get really bad, but let's also remember that political assassination is very old. It happens in lots of different climates. I mean, think about the worst time in America for political assassinations, right? It's not today. It was the 1960s, right? You got a president assassinated. You got the leading candidate of a political party, his brother assassinated, the other Kennedy.
Right.
And then you got Martin Luther King assassinated, all within a few years from one another. And there were a lot of other assassinations going on at the same time, right? And then the killer of Robert Kennedy, it was the killer that Robert Kennedy gets killed? Or, no, the killer of JFK gets killed. So you've got a killing of the killer, which just spurs all the conspiracy theories that go crazy. So while I think the atmosphere in Poland, the atmosphere in the United States, the atmosphere in lots of other countries around the world, the atmosphere around immigration, the atmosphere around nationalism, is white nationalism, whatever, is really horrific. It's really, really bad. We really haven't seen the kind of political violence that you would expect be spurred by it, at least not in the way we saw in the 1960s. Somebody said it's true that I can't remember if it was the president or the vice president during the Brazilian elections. Maybe it was the guy who won the presidency, Bolsonaro, was actually stabbed during the campaign. So,
oh, wow. Yeah. I remember that.
And not that long ago, the leading candidate for president in Mexico was murdered during the presidential run-up. So I think political violence, unfortunately, is with us. I think the attitude that the other political party is the enemy in a physical kind of existential way just spurs violence, because if there's an enemy, if they're trying to kill you, you want to kill first. I think they're all enemies, right? They're all our enemy, the right and the left, and almost all of them. But obviously violence is not the way to deal with it. And obviously the people actually committing the violence are personally responsible for that violence.
Right.
And they are usually pretty crazy. So they're usually nuts because they can't, 5 minutes thought would tell you you're not going to solve anything by this.
No, there is no way. Yeah, he had recently been released from prison after serving over 5 years for several bank robberies. He gained access to the stage with a media badge, etc.
They're usually nuts of some kind of another. It's the same as the guy who shut up the synagogue, who was an anti-Semite. And you can say there's an atmosphere of, but he was an anti-Semite and he was nuts. And yes, I think the atmosphere didn't help. I think the atmosphere that us versus them kind of attitude, and them being, I don't know, Jews, immigrants, fill in the blank, encourages the maniacs. But at the end of the day, he was a bad, evil person who acted out on his evil ideas.
I don't know if you have an opinion about this, quote, hostage diplomacy case. There was a Canadian who's been sentenced to death in China.
Well, it's horrible. I mean, he sentenced to death in China for drugs, for drug offense, which is in and of itself a victimless crime. And I do think this is a way of China playing hardball with the United States and Canada, because Canada arrested, on behalf of the U.S., Canada arrested this executive of a large cell phone manufacturer under the claim, which might be true, I don't know, right, that she had violated the company had violated the Iranian sanctions, and therefore was liable under criminal law in the United States. I wouldn't be surprised, given the nature of the current regime in China, that they are using this to retaliate as a bargaining chip to try to get her, and that is truly horrific. Now, you got to be pretty stupid to try to smuggle drugs through Asia. The Asian regimes generally are not friendly to drug smugglers. I can't remember which country it was. Maybe it was Thailand. Maybe it was Singapore. I think it was Singapore, where they basically executed a bunch of Australians because they were smuggling drugs. And
oh, wow. Okay.
This happened a few years ago. And I think that's wrong. That's immoral. That's evil, so on. But you got to be pretty stupid to be smuggling drugs in countries where
this is possible. Yeah.
No, that this is the consequence. This is not, it's bad enough to be caught in the US, on Australia and Europe smuggling drugs, but in some of these Asian countries, it's a death sentence. So don't be an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we will put that in the horrific file. Do you want to still have the Trump tweets and stuff in the horrific file, given the magnitude of the things I've classified as horrific today?
Tweets are creating the kind of atmosphere that you're saying is partially responsible.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah. So I don't know. Have you seen the Gillette ad that is talked about? Okay.
It's ridiculous.
So tell me what you see and what you think of it. Do you want to play it as part of this? Are you able to share your screen and play it for people so that they know what we're talking about?
Have you guys seen this Gillette ad? Let me see if I can find it. Oh, I have to click on it. One second. Let me open it. Let me go.
Then we can rock out to the Jezebels. You could play that. Oh, sorry.
That's a dark song. I thought that was a dark song.
Well, the video is a little bit dark, but it's about an oppressed woman breaking free. So.
Yeah, I know. It's a dark.
Yeah.
I know there's a way to do this. You know what? I know there's a way to do this.
You just did it the other day. I was watching your show and you were sharing.
Software. Oh, here it is. Okay. Here we go, guys. I think this will work.
Okay, cool.
Can people see this?
I can see it. Oh, you have to scroll down because the video is actually a bit down.
It's not that video?
No. There it is. That's it.
Ready, guys?
Yep.
Here we go. Oh, I've got the sound off. Sorry.
Yeah, you need sound.
Bullying.
The Me Too movement against sexual harassment.
Masculinity.
Is this the best a man can get? Is it?
Bullying, a problem
We can't hide from it.
Sexual harassment is taking over.
It's been going on far too long. We can't laugh it off.
Who's the daddy? What I
actually think she's trying to say.
making the same old excuses.
Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys.
But something finally changed.
Allegations regarding sexual assault and sexual harassment.
But she says
And there will be no going back. Because we believe in the best in men.
Men need to hold other men accountable.
Smile, sweetie. Come on.
To say the right thing. To act the right way.
Bro, not cool. Not cool.
Some already are. In ways big
Yo, men. We're acting like bullshit.
and small.
I'm strong.
Ow, skirt.
But some is not enough.
That's not how we treat each other, okay? Okay.
Because the boys watching today will be the men of tomorrow.
All right. I don't like it. I don't like it for a lot of reasons. One is they're a shaving company. Give me a break. I mean, who cares what you think, Gillette?
Well, but their slogan forever was the best a man can get.
Okay, so you could do something about the best a man could get without implying that most men or all men are bad people. That and you're equating rapists, like Weinstein, real creeps, the Me Too kind of really, but the real bad stuff in the Me Too, not the everyday stuff. With a couple of boys, wrestling on the ground. I mean, give me a break. Boys will be boys in some cases, and a couple of kids wrestling on the ground is not going to hurt anybody. And it's like,
Okay, so maybe that example where you say, okay, boys, they are going to kind of get into physical scuffles, and as long as it's not out of control, that's normal. Okay, that's
bullying. And do I regret pulling girls' hair when I was 12? How old was I? I was in, how old are you in sixth grade? I guess 10,
so
11.
10, 11, yeah.
No, not really. I mean, the girl kind of got her brother to beat me up, and but it's, you grow up, you bump against each other, you do stupid things. So I would take children out of this completely. I think most kids, I take out the bullying. I think most kids, you experiment with stuff. You do things that are inappropriate. It's part of why I was so, even when it came to Kavanaugh, I was like, he was 17. Leave me alone. We do stuff when we're young, and not that I'm justifying if what really happened. Who knows? But if it really happened, I wouldn't justify it, but it wouldn't be relevant. But leave kids out of this. There are ways to raise kids to respect women, but that has nothing to do with tuffling around. The only one I kind of respected was in the boardroom where he puts a hand out and they, yeah, of course. I mean, that's condescending and stupid. But you could do an ad like that.
What about the guy on the street where he stops the leering, sneery guy? He says, hey, that's not cool. I like that.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's all fine, but what is Gillette trying to say about this?
Well, they're just trying to say you could be a better example, I guess, for the boys, right?
So you could do it in a much better way than this. It's way too generalized. It's way broader than it needs to be. And again, it equivocates between looking at a woman. We talked about beauty. I mean, I look at women. We talk about beauty.
I'm objectifying Rahaf Muhammad, right? So
yeah, we're all. I don't think it's objectifying to look at something beautiful. So you between leering and looking and raping and Me Too and boys tumbling, you're making this whole equivocation between all these things, which I don't think is just. I mean, you should have one on Me Too and talk about if you really wanted to.
Real issues, yeah.
Real issues, real harassment. You could have another one about treating women who are intelligent with the respect that their intelligence deserve, the boardroom type thing. And you could talk about not objectifying people, right? And not objectifying women, but we also objectifying men. Men objectifying men, right? He's just got too good of a body. He's just a stupid, what do you call it?
Stupid jock, right? Stupid jock was what they used to say.
We objectify we use good looks to objectify people on every side of this. So, I think there's a way to do the ad or to make this statement in a positive way rather than a negative way. And this is what men should be doing.
It's not a bad statement that they want to make, right? They're saying, our slogan has always been the best a man can get. And it's this dual meaning, our razor is the best you can get. Go out, spend your money. But also, what is the best that a man can get, make himself in effect. And they're saying, yeah, we have learned something, but then they haven't given you a clear statement of exactly what it is that you've learned and how you're supposed to take away from it. Yeah.
No, and put it properly in perspective. I mean, yes, I mean, you could do something about how men should treat women without, going all out. And now, sure.
And they, not just men who treat women, but the issue of bullying, right? But bullying is not only about men. It's also about girls. I mean, girls bully other girls mercilessly in school. And there's girls who've committed suicide because of bullying from other girls.
In their bullying than the boys are. Boys, it's primarily physical. Girls do it psychologically, which is often much worse. So I think it's a much too complex issue to kind of try to wrap it all up in one, a minute and a half.
So maybe have a series and do a better job with the real issues.
But I don't think they're capable of figuring out, men are men, boys are boys. Now, what does that mean? What does masculinity mean? What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a boy? And I think these are far too complex issues for Gillette to get involved in. I think it's a mistake. And it's.
Are you being like? Is there a similar word for chauvinistic against like corporations that sell goods or something? What if Gillette says, "Hey, we want to use our clout and our commercial dollars to make a decent statement"?
But I'm not.
I can't. I'm not saying that they're not capable. No, but
they're not capable in the intellectual environment in which we live. I think very few people on the planet are capable of making an intelligent statement.
So they hire somebody who is.
Female relationships. I think who are they going to hire? They're going to hire some feminist.
I don't know.
They're not going to hire me. They're not going to hire me, and I'm not sure I know how to make the statement right because there is a delicate balance here between what it means to be masculine and feminine, and and then when does that spill over into being harassment, and what is wrestling in the backyard mean? I mean, I used to beat up my brother mercilessly, and I mean, I at least that's what I'm told by my brother. But no, but yeah, I mean, I used to be very physical as a kid, very physical, and I used to wrestle with boys. I used to wrestle with girls. I used to pull girls' hair, and was I a bad kid? Was I a bad role model, whatever? This is really hard stuff to define and articulate, and what kind of culture do you grow up in? And I do think there is an issue with men being, the war against boys. Of men being emasculated, of trying to take the masculinity out of boys. But what does masculinity mean, and how does it express itself? These are deep, interesting, complicated psychological questions that I don't think we're at a point in our culture where we can clearly define them without spilling over into an agenda of modern feminism, which is tied up in a lot of garbage. It has some good. I'm not saying it's all bad, but there's some good, but it's all tied up in some really bad stuff as well. It's complicated.
So in terms of, is Gillette horrible for trying to do this? Is Gillette horrible for trying to do this? There's been all kinds of reactions all over the map.
I don't like it. I think it's pretentious, and I think they're getting themselves in trouble. And I think they're more likely to piss people off than to make people happy, particularly men who they're trying to sell a razor to. So you could easily make a video on treat women with respect, treat women as intellectual equals, and not get into the masculinity issue.
The couple examples with the adults, the examples with the adults, to me, I found it kind of touching. I did.
Again, they generalize too much. There's a whole line of men saying boys will be boys, boys will be boys. And there's one guy who steps out and does the right thing. It's just too much of a bashing men in a way that
Yeah, that was a bit much. Like that was almost, you're going to laugh about it because there's so many guys in a row versus if you just had maybe a couple guys and it's like, oh yeah, boys will be boys, it would be more believable, right? Because that's the scale. It happens, but it's not on that scale.
ways to do it, I think, that respect men and respect women and make the argument sexual harassment is unacceptable. But even there, what constitutes sexual harassment? But clear sexual harassment is unacceptable. And treating women as object is unacceptable, and not respecting women for their intelligence is unacceptable. And if you ended there, fine. Nobody would object. That would be cool. But they went a lot further than that, and there's a lot more in the video than that, in my opinion.
The headline that they had, I think it's PJ Media, is just so funny. Gillette tells men they're repulsive creeps. Now give them your money, you piece of garbage.
Yes.
That's
good when you abuse the women around you. I mean,
that's terrible. Yeah. So that's a bit far, and if that's how you interpret it, yeah. But like I said, as a woman who's had some issues with some less than ethical guys, by their attempt, I was touched with some of it, but no, you're right. It's overbroad and it is payment. So as I said, at the end of the program notes, we have Jezebel's, kind of a dark song, but Haley Mary, if she did an interview on this song, comes out with, you're not anti-man, and you're also celebrating the fact that it is getting better in most places in the world for women. Generation after generation, it's getting a little bit better and a little bit better. I would never tell a daughter the same things that my mom told me. It's like, no,
No, and I would never tell my daughter. And I'm trying to think if my mother told that kind of stuff to my sisters. I don't really know, but yeah, I think it gets better every generation. You're seeing more women engineers. You're seeing more women scientists. You're seeing more women in fields that nobody would have conceived that women would enter in the past. And where intelligence matters, you're seeing more and more women enter those fields. The biases in math and in science are not completely going away, but life for women is much better today than it was 50 years ago. Yeah. So I think it's getting better. And the problem is that if anybody's going to undercut the progress made, it's these third wave kind of feminists who hate men and therefore are going to turn people off of the progress women have made in the name of man hatred. So, and that's what I worry about when I see ads like this.
Right.
Greenish Blue is asking a question with 100 something. I don't even know what currency this is.
What the unit is? Oh, wow. Yeah.
Wiggles. It looks like an Asian currency, but I'm not sure which currency. Have you seen the movie Mowgli, Legend of the Jungle on Netflix? The latest one. And I have to say I haven't. No. So if I see it, I'll try to respond. I'll try and respond. And then,
is it recommended?
He didn't say. He just asked.
Okay.
All right. I hope you feel better, Amy. Get well.
Terrible.
Yeah, I hate.
Thank you.
I've managed to so far.
And you travel a lot, so that's amazing.
That you... me, my wife's had a cold and all kinds of stuff, and I've been fine. So far I've been fine. We'll see what happens. I've got a big trip to Europe, to the frigid cold of.
I've seen you have colds though that hang on for weeks in the past, so maybe your immune system is.
It's just a fluke. Some years I get colds all the time. Some years I have nothing. I take vitamin D. I think that helps, but I don't know. I think it's better than vitamin C.
Okay. Well, thank you, sir.
Sure.
So I don't know when we're on next. I think it's sometime in February. So we'll have to.
I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Like nonstop from now on.
Yep.
Good. Thanks, Amy. Good show.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. Thanks everybody for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channels. Don't forget to support us on
don'tletitgo.com is my blog. Yeah.
Don'tletitgo.com is the blog, and they support you there.
Yes.
Feature. You can support Amy.
There sure is. Yeah.
On there, my support page on my website is coming. We're gonna probably launch February 1st. So we're getting there. I've got somebody hard at work on fixing the website on all kinds of dimensions, but including fixing a payment system. And don't forget to share and to like and use the super chat more often, and support the show. And you've been seeing all these short videos. There are a bunch of them. Don't forget to share those short videos with everybody. And yeah, the views are up. Everything's up because of the short videos. I think people like them.
Excellent.
Thanks, Amy. Feel better.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good rest of the week.
Bye.